morning, Temple fam. We are going live again today. Talk about the core wound and how this affects relationships and business. This is a conversation that I absolutely love to have because the core wound is the original wound. In a mythological sense, it's the when Adam and Eve got kicked of the garden, they had a moment where they got separated from God, from the divine connection to the wholeness of reality, and they had to go on this journey of isolation and separation. And I find the Bible as a reference point for their own healing journey. Like, I'm not going to go down the route of God and all of that, but I see it as a mythopoetic lens in which we get to view our own journey of becoming. And this is important because this will show up in every area of life. If we've all experienced this, we've all had a moment that was an original trauma that caused a separation from the divine, from our innate innocence. And that separation shows up in our relationships, it shows up in our business, it shows up in our own self sabotage and the patterns that we continue within our life. So, when we begin to consider what this core wound is about and begin to meet it, we can go on this healing journey, which actually opens us to possibility. Because why this is important, this is the thing that everybody wants to avoid. Because in that moment, the separation from our wholeness, from the remembrance that we are so much more, was so painful that we didn't know how to cope. And this generally occurred when we were young, and there's generational patterns of this where the core wound shows up over generations, and this may be a masculine, it may be a feminine thing, it may show up in many, many different ways. And this is where we see the person who's in business constantly hustling, constantly needing the next rush, the next fin, the next experience, the next client, more money. And it's like they're trying to fill a void. And this is the same in relationship when it's always more, always the next relationship, constantly chasing, constantly wondering, what about the next one? Oh, there may be something more out there for me. There may be an experience which gives me something I don't currently have. This is the seeking of the more and what a person is trying to do. And this stems over to addiction. And I'm not just talking about alcohol, drugs, that kind of addiction. I'm also talking about social media. I'm talking about the habits we do to stop ourselves from feeling. These addictions stem from this same place because what we're trying to do is fill that emptiness inside of us. The emptiness is the wound. It is the separation from God, spirit, source, whatever you want to call it. That is the pain. And what we're looking to do is fill that with external, something outside of ourselves. So we continuously run away from ourselves by seeing what could possibly fill that void. And this is where people detach from themselves. They give their power away for the chase for something else. And the only way to actually begin to heal this is beginning to pause, to slow down, to be with that underlying pain. And this is painful, right? Because the original trauma, which is stored within the somatic body, it was painful. That disconnection, it hurt us beyond belief. We didn't have the tools at the time to be able to feel that. It was overwhelming for our system. It was so immense that the only pathway available for us was to dissociate, disconnect, and suppress that emotion. And so when we begin to approach this sacred wound, that's another term for the core wound, because there's an element here where it is also the doorway back to the divine. It is the doorway back to our innate wholeness, the realization that we are always whole, that even in the wounding we are whole. And when we begin to approach it, we begin to go into the patterns of avoidance that make us want to separate ourselves, that make us want to pick up the phone because it's uncomfortable, that makes us want to have the drink because I don't want to feel this. Because we don't know what's on the other side of that. because it feels like approaching death. Because the ego will die in that moment. Because the ego is a construct. It's a construct that was adapted to create a survival pattern so you could operate within this world. It's great. It does its job tremendously. The problem is the ego views itself as separate from the whole, from everything. And so when we begin to heal and come back through the sacred wound back into wholeness, the ego's like, but if I'm connected to everything, I'm no one. And the ego likes to be someone. So we go into an avoidance pattern because the ego doesn't want to die. This is what the design of an initiation is all about because it asks us to meet these parts of ourselves that we've separated from and being willing to allow the ego to die again and again. And so when we approach this, we begin to see all the patterns of unconscious material that have kept us safe and away from the sacred wound begin to bubble up. And if you're in business or you're in a relationship and you're seeking more outside of yourself, this is a sign that there's actually a deeper current underneath that you haven't felt, that you haven't been willing to experience yet. This is the sacred wound. And instead of reaching out, you need to turn the gaze inwards. It needs to come back in to yourself and see, actually, you get to experience this pain. And that may not sound great because you're like, why would I want to experience pain? Because this is how we allow ourselves to come fully into our bodies. Because that moment of pain was a moment where we dissociated from ourselves, from our bodies. There was a disconnect between soul and body because it was so immense. The pain was so immense within your body that it was only safe to dissociate on some level. And that's okay. That's okay. But your job, your willingness to come back in to meet yourself at this level and be willing to experience this pain is the thing that will allow you to go through and begin to heal on such a deep level where no longer are you seeking outside of yourself. Because the seeking is the avoidance pattern. It's the chasing that keeps you safe. And so if you're able to just pause, and this will take time, there's layers to this. I've been in this journey for 6 years now, and I'm still coming up against next layers of this, deeper and deeper into the abyss, into the void of my own wounding, and finding how I can welcome this pain home, welcome it in to my body so that I can experience more and more life. Because there's an underlying fear that says it's not safe to experience this much sensation, to experience this much pain, to experience this much sensation running through the body. And we need to be able to adapt our nervous systems to be able to hold the sensations so that we can come more deeply into ourselves and be here, because this is how we're calling in our potential and our capacity to be all that we are. And how this then shows up in relationship and business is no longer you're chasing. You recognize your innate wholeness. You're not coming from a place of need. Because this is the energy that you're coming out if you're trying to grasp something. Have you ever wondered why so many people are pleasing in this world? It's because they're disconnected from themselves due to this core wound. They're believing that they can get something outside of themselves that will make them feel loved, validated, worthy. But it's actually coming back and feeling the sensation that was this original wound. And when you do this, no longer are you coming from a place of need. You're not needing the client. You're not needing the relationship. You're choosing and you're desiring. Because you recognize that you're innately whole. That you, as you are who you need to be to serve this world, to create in this world, to have the relationship, to have the love, to have the house, to have all the things that you desire that's on your soul. It's not a thing to fill the void, it's actually to help you reveal more of yourself in this world. And this is coming from a very different place and a way for us to begin to change culture and society because we're learning that as beings, we are innately whole. And when we do this, we begin healing. Firstly, for ourselves, and then for our communities, and then for the world. It starts on the individual level where we need to feel that deep rooted pain. And this is why some people continue to spiral in the same patterns again and again. And they're wondering, why is this not working? Why am I not getting anywhere? Why am I repeating this same pattern again and again? It's because they're trying to heal the surface level problems, the surface level pain, and they haven't sunk deep enough into this core wound to begin to recognize that this undercurrent, this root cause, is the cause of all their surface level problems. And when you begin to sink beneath the surface and begin to feel this deeper layer of pain, you'll begin to heal, and that will affect your business. It will affect your relationship because you're showing up as a whole person. Not someone who needs anything, but someone who is choosing this from a sovereign and true place. So begin to allow yourself to slow. Notice yourself when you're distracted, when you're going to pick up the phone, when you're going to just avoid. And this doesn't mean that's bad. It doesn't mean that you can't pick up your phone. It's asking yourself, where is that coming from? Are you doing that out of a routine behavior, or are you consciously choosing that behavior? Because most people are coming at it from an unconscious place because there's an unconscious avoidance. And when you begin to catch yourself, you become aware that something else is happening, and then you get to become aware that there is an underlying cause that you're seeking to avoid, and then you have the conscious choice to begin to meet this. So enjoy the healing.